Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to Season 3 of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L.E Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kayla Smith, CEO of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and pregnancy, an integrative, holistic nutritionist, doctor of natural medicine and training, creator of the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L method, an infertility warrior, two-time boy mom, and women's health expert. This podcast is for women struggling with infertility, painful periods, terrible PMS, or really just any symptoms of hormone imbalance that they are ready to eliminate for good. Tune in weekly as we interview amazing experts in the field of women's health, breaking down those hormone walls, nerding out on nutrition, and having way too much fun. Whether you're beginning your journey or you've been struggling for years, we're going to finally help you put those pieces of your hormone puzzle back together so that you can get pregnant and eliminate those pesky symptoms for good. Not to mention, stay pregnant, have a healthy super baby, and easy postpartum. Are you ready? This season is packed with even more expert guests, sharing groundbreaking knowledge, giving you that jolt of energy that you so desperately need, sending you lots of virtual hugs, and inspiring you to take your fertility into your own hands and make that baby. Thank you all so much for tuning in and being amazing listeners. So now let's get started on your road to transformation. On today's show, we have Dr. Leah Gordon of Womanhood Wellness. She is a licensed naturopathic physician and functional medicine doctor, as well as a fertility consultant, specializing in natural fertility, natural IVF support, root cause hormone balancing, and integrative women's reproductive health. Her passion behind womanhood wellness was sparked out of her own personal story, struggling with birth control issues, low libido, painful periods, and male factor infertility. So today's show, we're talking all about birth control and how it affects your fertility and how to break up with it for good. Now, let's welcome Dr. Leah to the show. Hey, Dr. Leah, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know, I'm super excited for this conversation. This is going to be really good. So let's dive into that. Tell us more about you and how you started working in women's health and becoming a naturopath and a functional medicine practitioner.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor, functional medicine practitioner, and I was actually exposed to an alternative way of medicine when I was really young. As a teenager, I started working at an alternative spinal rehab clinic where we were basically all the alternative for back surgery. And it was there that I learned the power of nutrition and lifestyle and the power of the healing potential in our bodies and how practitioners can play such a big role in that. And so I was really young, introduced to that. I worked at that clinic for 6 years before I went to college, actually. And it sparked a passion inside of me that I knew I wanted to be a doctor and find the root cause and help people with holistic healing. And I went down the path of trying to figure out which type of doctor that was going to be. And I interviewed everybody. I shadowed a bunch of different doctors and physicians, and my heart really was with naturopathic medicine. I felt like that's where I was meant to do work in the world. And then with my focus in women's health, a lot of it came out of my own personal journey, struggling with my own issues. And, from everything to birth control issues to painful periods and gut issues to infertility and low libido, and everything that I focused on has really been my own journey. And I feel really passionate about helping women in all of those seasons of womanhood.
I love that. And I love that at such a young age, you got exposed to this natural medicine world. That's so amazing because back then I can imagine that nobody was talking about natural medicine. So that's so cool.
We were very fringe at the time. And,
right.
Now I go back to my hometown and they're like, oh my gosh, you're a naturopathic doctor. Whereas when I left for college, they're like,
what
are you doing? You're throwing your life away. Become a real doctor. And now everyone wants to talk to me. They're like, please, help me.
Yep, same. It's so funny how the times have changed. I love it though. It's amazing. So it's true healthcare is what I say.
Exactly.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about birth control, which is something we haven't talked a ton on the show about, but it's so important because I always say, like, if women would go back and read the pamphlet that comes with the birth control, they would never take it.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
So let's
So
talk.
long, too.
Yeah. Right. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Why is birth control so bad for us? Can we start there?
Yeah. So, birth control is interesting and there's so much to unpack when it comes to birth control. Obviously at the time when it was invented, women were in a pickle, right? We didn't understand hormones to the degree that we do now. We didn't understand our cycles. They didn't really know how to prevent pregnancy. They were just learning what progesterone was and estrogen was at that time. And so there really weren't any other options for women. And so I understand why there was the push for it, in the sense that like women really didn't have a lot of, their own autonomy over their reproductive health. However, what was invented and created wasn't really good for us either. And we're seeing this the flip side of that. So, birth control comes in many forms. When you say birth control, most people are talking about hormonal birth control, where you take hormones. And it comes in all forms now. It started with an oral option, but there's shots and IUDs and rings and patches and all sorts of stuff. But when you're taking synthetic hormones, you are greatly disrupting your body in multiple ways. So the intention of birth control is to prevent you from getting pregnant. And a woman's body is really complex. It's a very complex orchestra of lots of different things happening. And, birth control is just coming in and kind of shutting off that entire orchestra. And although that orchestra does often result in ovulation and potentially a pregnancy if you don't know how to prevent it, it also does everything else in our body, right? Like our hormones affect our mood and our gut health and our, detoxability and our liver and our skin and everything about us are our hormones. So when you come in with a big whammy like birth control and just shut that whole system off, it has a lot of consequences. So yes, maybe you can prevent pregnancy, but you're also bringing in a whole host of problems. So that's one piece, in that taking the birth control shuts off your system. Also, just the hormones themselves have their own side effect profile. So ethinyl estradiol is the typical estrogen form. And then the progesterone part of birth control is called progestins, and they're synthetic. They're not natural. And so they have their own side effect profile, just like any other medication does. And each birth control has a different type of side effect profile because they're different drugs. And that has its own host of issues that women experience. And then lastly, birth control, especially hormonal birth control, is often used in our country to solve period problems and hormone problems, but it doesn't actually solve them. I use the analogy that it's like having a fire in your house and the fire alarm is going off, and that's obviously very annoying. And taking the pill for a hormonal problem like painful periods or acne or, whatever, PMS, any symptom that a woman has, is simply unplugging the fire alarm. So you think you've solved the problem because the annoyance is gone, but the fire is still burning. And when we use the pill to quote unquote solve period problems, we aren't solving them. And we let these fires burn in these women for years and years and years. And when they go off the pill to get pregnant, for instance, they can't, because we never helped them. We never helped actually solve their problem. And so that's not necessarily a direct cause from the pill, but it's using the pill to cover up issues that we should be addressing.
For sure. I love that analogy too. It's such it paints a really clear picture of that. So I love that. And so I know people listening to this are thinking, okay, so you're telling me the pill's bad. So how do I break up with it? What do I do instead? So can you talk to that?
Yeah. And just to be clear, like, I'm not anti-birth control. There's a time and a place. It's a tool. And sometimes I prescribe it in my practice to patients, especially if, we've worked on all the root cause things and she's a person who just knows in her heart she can't track her cycles. She's very afraid of getting pregnant, or she maybe has severe endometriosis. We've done everything else, but she's in grad school and there's no way to reduce her stress. There's times when I prescribe birth control. However, as an overarching category, if you want to not be on it, I have a pretty comprehensive approach to breaking up with birth control. So I obviously you can just stop cold turkey if you want, but I don't recommend that. I have a program called Breaking Up with Birth Control, and
I love it.
In that a lot of women are in different stages of their stopping birth control. So if anyone's actually just stopped at cold turkey, you can still do all of these same steps to support your body. But ideally, in my approach, I try to support the body before we pull the pill. And what that looks like is really doing all of the things that are optimizing hormone health and overall health in general. I do that for a couple reasons, because a lot of times when a woman is put on birth control, almost 50% of the time, even more so now, it is for non-pregnancy related concerns. It's for hormonal issues. And we know how to support the root causes of those. Things like balancing your blood sugar and making sure you're eating good, whole food, non-inflammatory foods, making sure that you're sleeping well and balancing your circadian rhythm, making sure that your microbiome is balanced, that your detoxability is optimized, that you've reduced toxin exposure, that you've reduced your stress. All of these different things that ultimately lead to optimal hormonal balance and fertility to begin with. I try to encourage women to do as much of that as they can before they pull the pill, because once you pull the pill, if you are using it for contraception as well, that can feel really stressful. If you are trying to learn how to track your cycle and do all of that and change your diet and your lifestyle and try to reduce your stress and like, oh my God, what if I accidentally get pregnant? And the likelihood that your cycle will be irregular and not optimal if you don't take those steps first is very likely. You know, it's likely that it might take you a lot longer to have a regular cycle that you can track naturally to prevent pregnancy if you haven't made all of these shifts and changes to begin with. So that's kind of my recommendation. You know, replenish the nutrients birth control has lost as much as you can. Get yourself to about 80, 85% optimal. And then when you stop birth control, you just have that 15% left. And it's at that time when you feel more calm. Maybe the home that you live in is less toxic. You know, you maybe know how to eat a good quality breakfast in the morning. You have a better sleep routine. All of these things are in place. And so then your main focus can be on just optimizing any extra hormonal imbalance that shows up post-pill and really working on tracking your cycle so that you can prevent pregnancy naturally.
Gotcha. And it sounds like these are the things that we should be doing for overall health, but definitely if we're breaking up with the pill. So I love it.
Because when you break up with the pill, a lot of women who just stop cold turkey or who stop birth control have a huge raging flood of symptoms that come back or are worse than it ever was before. And so, you know, stopping the pill isn't just like, let's take, you know, a few weeks to just detox actual hormones from birth control. You know, the conventional world fights back on this whole birth control detox concept because they're like, the half-life of birth control is really short and it doesn't take long to detox it out of the body. And it's like, that's not what we mean when we talk about, in my mind, that's not what we mean when we talk about detoxing birth control. Yes, there are synthetic hormones in birth control that we need to physically detox and get out of the body. And when I talk about detoxing birth control, I talk about supporting all of the impacts that it's done to your body, but also giving your body the foundation that it needs to actually thrive. Because it's not so simple to just stop the pill and be like, oh, I'm fine, I'm fertile, and my hormones are completely balanced now that the pill is just out of my life. Because if you went on the pill for an issue to begin with, you've got to support that. And if you started the pill without any problems, the chances are you have issues from it. So yeah, it's a lot more complicated than just stop the pill and let it get out of your system for a few days.
For sure. And you do talk about detoxing from the pill, especially if we're trying to conceive. You know, a lot of people on this show, they've been on the pill for many years and they come off it, like you said, and then they can't get pregnant. So how long should we give ourselves when we're trying to, you know, detox from the actual hormones in the pill, the synthetic hormones?
Yeah. So I recommend, you know, supporting detox in general. So in my program, I talk a lot about the different details of detox, but to actually get synthetic hormones out, we have to support phase 3, which is getting them out, pooping, peeing, sweating, that kind of thing. In particular, hormones are very much processed through the gut. So if you're not pooping regularly, there's nothing that you can do that's going to support you. So like that's step number 1, because I always say estrogen needs to leave on the poop train, right? And if the poop train is not leaving the station, you are going to keep recirculating that estrogen, your natural estrogen, as well as that from birth control. You also need to support your gallbladder because it has to go through your bile, and bile is released from your gallbladder into your gut. So supporting with things like bitter herbs. I love bitter foods, things like leafy greens, dark chocolate, anything that, broccoli sprouts. So the cruciferous vegetables are very much needed. That's for phase 2 detox. So to move estrogen out, we really want to first open the trains of elimination. So drink plenty of water, make sure you're pooping. And then you want to support phase 2. So a lot of things with broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, any of the cruciferous vegetables are very important. Other nutrients like glutathione. You need lots of protein. So I'm not a fan of, just like juice cleanses primarily, because you need that protein, the amino acids, to help move hormones out of your body. And then you want to support phase 1, which I say there's a bus station, a train station, and then the train itself. Phase 2 is the train station, and the toxins need their ticket. And phase 1 is the bus station that takes you to the train station. And we don't want to push phase 1 too fast, because it can cause a lot of unhealthy estrogen metabolites in the body. And so things that push that too fast are coffee, alcohol, paint fumes, other VOCs, exhaust from cars. So when you're thinking about conceiving, you want to open up that detox pathway, not only for the hormones from birth control, but all the other toxins and things. And if you've been on birth control, most likely all of those pathways are kind of impacted negatively. So birth control can change the microbiome in your gut, which can impact your poop train. It can also affect your bile and your gallbladder. It makes them sluggish. So you're affecting the, getting the estrogen onto the poop train. If you have been taking birth control for a while, you're probably low in certain key nutrients, because we know birth control depletes certain vitamins and minerals that are needed to run the bus station and the train station and the poop station. So it's like all of these things. So how much time? I am a fan of at least 3 months. I don't really like doing anything sooner than 3 months when it comes to hormones ever. Obviously, if you become pregnant accidentally and that's wanted for you and that's exciting, just support yourself as much as you can, with a good prenatal and optimal diet and everything. But if you have the time, if you're really thinking like I'm wanting kids in the next, 6 months to a year, 3 months is minimum. I would say 6 months is ideal. And then if you have a whole year, that's my dream. If you have a whole year to prepare your body before pregnancy, that's my ultimate dream for you.
Yes. I love that. And I love talking about the estrogen pathways and detoxing those. And it's so, so many Western medical doctors are not talking about this. And so some of them don't even recognize it as legitimate. And I'm like, there's science here, but
they know, because the phase 1 is the CYP enzymes. And you're very familiar with that with all of their medications. It's why everyone says not to eat grapefruit when you're taking a med, because it pushes the CYP phase 1. And so estrogen is detoxed in the body very similarly, just like every other drug. So it's important for us to understand it.
For sure. So speaking of labs, are there any labs that we can test for this to see if these pathways are blocked or clogged? Like, what are your favorite testing that you do, your functional tests?
Yeah. So I really like hormone metabolite tests for estrogen in particular. So, companies like Precision Analytical have the Dutch test. Vibrant has another, urine metabolite test, but basically you can see so if we think about the bus station, that's phase 1, it can tell you where your estrogens are going. And we have estrogen in our body because we make it. We get it from birth control if we're taking a form that has estrogen. And then we also get exposed to what are called xenoestrogens from toxins in our environment. And they all have to go down this pathway. And doing a urine metabolite test can tell you about which metabolite or which bus station essentially your estrogens are going down. There's a preferred bus station that is safer and healthier. And then there are 2 not so good ones. One's pretty nasty that we know leads to cancers and growths and all sorts of stuff. And so you can see those levels and see how your body is pushing that. For instance, one of the metabolites gets pushed if you have a lot of pesticide exposure. So that could be a clue that maybe you need to really go organic or help your body detox and get rid of those. It can also guide you on if you should be taking more of the nutrients that support that healthy, pathway, like the cruciferous vegetables, the broccoli sprouts, the sulforaphane, all of those. And then it can also tell you about your phase 2, your train station tickets, things like methylation, COMT, that kind of stuff. So I find that test is really helpful to kind of see generally where your detox pathways are. And then beyond that, it can be helpful to run toxicity panels to kind of see, do you have exposure to mold or environmental toxins or heavy metals? That can tell you not only about your overall exposure to things, but also how well your body is detoxing and getting rid of them. When it comes to fertility, the analogy I use with toxins is that you don't want an overflowing sink. If you have an overflowing sink, then you have infertility most likely. And imagine the water coming in or toxins coming into your system, and your drain is how well you get rid of them. So you can have an overflowing sink if you have a lot of water coming in. So maybe you're exposed to a lot of toxins. You use perfume and deodorants that are conventional. You have air fresheners everywhere and all of that. So the water is full on blast. Or you can also have an overflowing sink if your drain is clogged. So that's like, you're not pooping daily. You don't drink a lot of water. You're not sweating. You don't have, phase 1 and phase 2 supported. So when it comes to fertility, I see impacts even before a fully overflowing sink with sperm quality, with egg quality, with impacts to your hormones that can impact ovulation. And we really want to lower that sink level. And birth control contributes to blocking that sink up. So we need to not only support all the other things that fill up the sink, avoiding our toxin exposure, supporting our detox, but also supporting the impacts from birth control itself. So, that is helpful to check those toxins. And then lastly, sometimes I will run stool tests, like looking at the microbiome in the gut. In particular, there's a key marker called beta-glucuronidase that will tell me about a particular type of detox of estrogen, which is the glucuronidation pathway. Basically, they steal the train tickets. So estrogen gets its ticket and it goes on the poop train. And then what beta-glucuronidase does is it steals estrogen's ticket, and then it gets kicked off the poop train and recirculated. And so if you have a high amount of beta-glucuronidase, then your estrogen doesn't leave. And that causes a whole bunch of problems. And it can cause other toxin issues too. And how we shift that is to rebalance the gut microbiome. So this is why I like a year for women to balance before fertility. But, these are more specific details and things that can just be helpful if you're really serious about optimizing, because, I always say a healthy body is a fertile body. Fertility is innate within us. It's a natural process that is always, acting on us. So if we have an issue with fertility, there's something that we either need that we're not getting, or we're blocking it somehow. So the goal is to just unblock those blockages, and then fertility is just the side effect that will happen.
For sure. I love that analogy. And I do similar testing. I work with Meridian Valley Labs and do the dried urine test, and I do a gut test. And so, and it's so helpful. And I find, and I'm sure you can relate to this, but so many of my clients will say, like, why is my Western doctor not doing any of these tests? This is the thing that made all the difference. And now I'm pregnant. And so, it's just so helpful, again, to work with a functional practitioner like you or I, because it just makes all the difference in the world.
I know. And it honestly breaks my heart, because I do a lot with infertility, and, I see patients who've been trying for 3.5 years plus that have been told they have unexplained infertility. And one appointment with me, I'm like, this is not unexplained. This is very obvious. What is going on? And I'm so sad it took you so long to find someone like me, because we could have helped you so much longer ago, and forcing fertility to try to happen with certain meds. And like, I had to do IVF myself to have my daughter because my husband's sperm, and that's a whole other conversation for another day. So I'm not like anti-reproductive support. I wouldn't have a family if it weren't for that. But I think we push people down that path way too much and too soon without supporting them on what is actually going on.
For sure. I agree. And that was my story too. They told me because I was 36 that I had to do IVF, and that was my only factor. I had unexplained. There was nothing medically wrong. And I was like, no, I'm not taking that. And I had my second baby at 40. So there you go.
Oh my God.
Oh, I love it. But I could talk to you all day, Dr. Leah, but we do have to take a break to hear a word from our sponsors. So we're going to do that. We're going to come right back. We're going to talk practical tips on more things we can do to optimize our fertility and hormones and break up with the pill. So we'll be right back. Hey, y'all. It's Coach Kayla here. I hope you are loving this episode as much as I am. We will be back in just a minute, but first, a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L.E Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and the business of coaching. Whether you're struggling to get pregnant with pesky hormone symptoms, or you're working to build a career in the fertility and women's health space, we have you covered. Visit our website at www.coachkayla.com to learn more on how we can help you. Text the keyword fertility to 615-257-8855 for your free fertility meal plan. Hey, Dr. Leah, welcome back.
Thank you.
So let's talk practical tips. I know we discussed this a little bit in the beginning, but kind of recap for us. What are maybe your top 5 things that we can do to optimize our fertility and hormones, especially if we've been on birth control?
Yeah. So the thing I'd like to paint the picture of is when it comes to optimal hormonal balance and fertility, remember that the body is innately intelligent and it wants to be in balance. So we need to give the body what it is missing and get out of its way. So the number one thing that birth control really impacts and that you need to replenish and support for your hormones and fertility is your nutrient status. So optimizing and having a surplus of energy. So thinking about your body like a battery. You do not want to be barely functioning, with a red bar. You want it to be fully charged up. And how we do that is to make sure that you're eating plenty of food. So more often than not in my practice, I'm convincing women to eat more food, not less.
Same.
So making sure that you are really prioritizing at least 3 solid, balanced square meals a day, starting with breakfast. Balancing your blood sugar is one of the most important foundations to optimal hormone and fertility. And that starts with a high quality protein rich and, high quality fat and healthy carb rich breakfast. So the number one tip I would leave women today is to make sure you're eating a good breakfast. The second one is to optimize your nutrients. So if that is eating a really, really good, healthy, nutrient dense diet, plus potentially taking some extra support to replenish, especially what birth control has depleted. So really high quality multivitamin or prenatal, something that is deeply nourishing and replenishing of those nutrients, because you can't, your body is like an alphabet that writes a book. If you're missing a few letters, you can't have written language in a book, right? If you're missing A and P and N, the same thing goes with vitamins and minerals. Our whole body functions on all of those and they need to be adequate. We want to focus on your sleep routine and rest. So one of the number one factors that can disrupt hormones is lack of sleep, lack of rest, and an imbalanced, circadian rhythm. So working on going to bed earlier, sleeping more, and having a more consistent routine is key. And then I highly recommend creating boundaries for yourself in the sense of saying no to things that you don't really want to do, saying yes to things that bring you joy, and just limiting your overwhelm and stress. I work in the space of fertility, and I would say probably the number one thing that blocks fertility is a overstimulated nervous system and stress. So do what you can to make shifts and changes in your life. Meditation and exercise and all of that are amazing and wonderful. And if you have some big, tiger or lion in your life, either shifting how you think about that or getting a shift away from that, right? If it's your boss, your job, getting help in some capacity, and then reducing toxins. So like I said, birth control can really greatly impact your detox pathways. And when you want to have optimal hormones and not have things like acne or PCOS or endometriosis or painful periods, we've got to get inflammation under control and support, our toxic load. So those are some simple things, because you can just swap out your products, right? It starts mostly with what you bring into your home. So what are you using for your shampoo, your conditioner, your dish soap, your cleaning products, these can all be swapped and make huge changes on your hormones and fertility.
For sure. For sure. I love that. And then what about supplements? I know you said a good prenatal or multivitamin. Is there anything else? I know it's person to person, but is there anything that's like a core thing that you're like, yeah, you should be taking this?
Yeah, so I am a big fan of a really high quality multivitamin or prenatal. I really love Needed. I helped design that line. Yeah,
I love those ladies. Great
so,
product. Yes.
Yeah, they have a wonderful line of different supplements, and we dose things to be more optimal so that it's not just bare minimum, which is what a lot of prenatals are like. So I use that in my birth control detox because it's so optimal for detox and for everything about it.
And yes, then they have a powder too. They have a powder, which is nice. You can
powder and
pills sometimes you throw that powder in your smoothies. So I love that.
Exactly. If you find stress and an overwhelmed nervous system as a part of your case, they also have a wonderful stress support formula that I helped design. So I'm kind of like biased about it, but really any adaptogenic herbs, things like ashwagandha, holy basil, schisandra, shatavari, these are all really wonderful for supporting that part of your life. But again, no supplement is going to outdo a really horrible like work situation. So you want to make those changes. And then for birth control, detoxing and supporting specifically, you just really want to support your detox pathways. So things like DIM or I3C or sulforaphane, these all come from the cruciferous vegetables, but you can also take them in supplement form. Some people, if they have gut issues, are still working on their gut and it's harder for them to eat a lot of cruciferous vegetables. So that's where a supplement can be really helpful, especially with DIM and these other things. Glutathione is another wonderful nutrient that helps that phase 2 and help detox the chemicals and the hormones out of your body. Glutathione specifically, or you can take NAC, which is a precursor to glutathione. And there's lots of other nutrients, because to help detox and detoxing birth control, you need all these vitamins and minerals that you get from the multi. You need adequate protein, which you can get from your diet, or if you're a vegetarian or you don't eat a lot of animal protein, for instance, you could maybe supplement with powders. Like I said, Needed has a collagen powder. I keep plugging them, but there's lots of other good powders, just making sure that they're clean. And then making sure that you have your nutrients from cruciferous vegetables and glutathione. Calcium D-glucarate is another nutrient that you can use if you find you have high beta-glucuronidase. And then I do like pre and probiotics if you have a poor microbiome. If you're working with a functional medicine doctor, you can rebalance your entire microbiome. And so that involves, different herbs and things that maybe bring down the bad guys and the yeast and all of that. But on a general sense, eating fermented food or bringing in a pre and probiotic can help to shift that gut microbiome, which is really important as well.
I love that. And yes, Needed's amazing. So another shameless plug for them. They're awesome. So check them out. So Dr. Leah, I could talk to you all day. We do have to close out. So tell us where we can find you. Where can we learn more about working with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Dr. Leah Gordon. I know, so modern of me.
I need to get on TikTok. I haven't jumped in that pool yet.
It's a whole other game, so I don't know if you want to jump in, but just DRLEAH Gordon. And then womanhoodwellness.com is my company, so you can check out. I have a bunch of free guides there. I link everything as well in my Instagram, link in bio. And for anyone interested, I have a Breaking Up with Birth Control checklist. So you can go there and kind of see a checklist of the different things that I mentioned and that you want to support, as well as a free guide on optimal lab ranges and things like that. So check that all out, Womanhood Wellness and Dr. Leah Gordon.
Amazing. I love it. We'll link it all in the show notes. So it'll be really easy to find you. Perfect. Awesome. So before we close, well, first, thank you so much for being here. Such a great conversation. So thank you for your time.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Then before we close out, tell us, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to leave us with, piece of advice or some encouragement?
Yeah, I would just say that your body is meant to be balanced. It's meant to be optimal, fertile, and feeling as best that it can. And it's very intelligent and it's always moving toward that. So know that giving it the simple things that it needs and removing the blockages results in like magical transformations, beyond what you could ever imagine, because our bodies are just so amazing and powerful. So don't lose hope. Know that if you're having issues, there's usually always a root cause. Continue to, unpack and just give your body what it needs and focus on the basics and the foundations.
I love it. Amazing. Well, thank you so much again for being here.
Of course. Thank you.
And thank you, ladies, for listening to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Until next time, bye. Hey, hang on just 1 second before you go. I want to make sure that you are aware of all of the amazing free resources that I have for you on my website at CoachKayla.com. From a fertility meal plan, a cycle syncing quick start guide, a holistic healing cookbook, as well as master classes, blog posts by me and some amazing experts in the fields of fertility, hormones, and nutrition. So many wonderful resources that will help you on your journey. And I wish there had been something like this when I was going through my 2 years of infertility, but there just wasn't. And so that's why I decided to create all of this for you. So make sure that you go and check it out and you take advantage of this plethora of support that I have provided for you. And spoiler alert, these were some of the same tricks and the same foods that I used to get myself pregnant, not once, but twice, even after my doctors said that I couldn't. So I know that these things work. So make sure you take advantage of that. And I cannot wait for you to be my next success story. So thanks, love. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in today to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Check out the show notes for today's episode at CoachKayla.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next week.